The air in Houston carries a specific kind of weight. It is not merely the humidity, though that alone is enough to press the breath out of you, clinging to your skin like a second layer of resolve. It is the atmospheric pressure of ambition. If you stand on the corner of Louisiana Street in downtown, watching the glass monoliths of the energy sector reflect the brutal Texas sun, you are looking at a skyline built on the crude, physical extraction of value from the earth. For decades, this city has been defined by what can be pulled from the ground: oil, gas, concrete. But if you shift your gaze, if you look past the steel skeletons of the oil rigs and the sprawling, heat-radiating freeways that vein through the Third Ward and River Oaks, you will find a different kind of power grid. It is a power grid that does not run on fossil fuels, but on a resource far more volatile and far more precious: the sheer, unyielding will of the black woman. To understand the wealth we are about to document, you must first understand the silence that surrounds it. We are conditioned to think of wealth as noise: the popping of champagne corks, the roar of a supercar engine, the flash of diamonds under stadium lights. And certainly, that exists here. But true power, the kind that shifts the axis of a city, is often quiet. It is the silence of a pen scratching across a contract that secures ownership of a master recording. It is the hushed hum of the air conditioning in a boardroom where a black woman sits at the head of the table, the only splash of color in a sea of gray suits, carrying the historical weight of her ancestors' labor while dictating the terms of her own empire. This is the double consciousness that W.E.B. Du Bois spoke of, transmuted into modern capitalism. These women possess a dual vision. They see the world as it is, with all its systemic friction and historical exclusion, and simultaneously, they see the world as they are bending it to be. There is a profound psychological friction in this ascent. In a society that has historically demanded black women to be the mules of the earth, carriers of burdens, nurturers of others' dreams, the act of accumulating vast, dynastic wealth is a form of rebellion. It is a counterstory, written in real time. When a black woman in Houston moves from the choir stand to the tax bracket of a small nation, she is not just buying luxury, she is buying safety. She is purchasing insulation from a world that rarely affords her the benefit of the doubt. This is the hidden texture of the black tax, the reality that excellence is the bare minimum requirement for entry. To be on this list, to be among the wealthiest in a city of tycoons, one cannot simply be good. One must be undeniable. One must be a fortress. We are about to trace a lineage of this undeniable power. We are looking at 10 women who have mastered the alchemy of turning talent into equity. This is not a list of lottery winners or fleeting viral sensations. This is a study in architectural longevity. From the quiet, recurring syndication checks that deposit while the city sleeps, to the explosive, earth-shaking revenue of global tours that rival the GDP of island nations. We are tracking the movement of capital from the hands of the gatekeepers into the hands of the architects. We will see how faith is monetized without losing its soul, how artistic avant-garde is translated into real estate portfolios, and how the angry black woman trope was dismantled and sold back to the world as a billion-dollar brand of self-love. Houston is called the Space City because it is where humanity learned to leave the Earth. It is fitting, then, that these women call it home. Because to build what they have built, in the face of the gravitational pull of history, required them to defy the laws of social physics. They have created their own gravity. As the sun sets over the bayou and the city lights flicker on, millions of dollars are moving through the fiber optic cables beneath our feet, directed by the hands of women who were never meant to touch the controls. Sit tight. We are counting down the architects of a new Southern aristocracy. This is the definitive ranking of the richest black women in Houston. To understand the magnitude of the fortunes we are about to unveil, one must first understand the physics of the environment in which they were forged. Friction. In the mechanical world, friction is a force that resists motion. It creates heat. It wears down parts. It is the enemy of momentum. But in the social and economic hierarchy of the American South, friction serves a different purpose. It is the invisible atmospheric pressure applied to black ambition, a systemic resistance designed to keep labor in its place and capital out of reach. For the black woman, this friction is doubly potent, compounded by the intersection of race and gender, a historical gravity that suggests she should be the help, not the head of the board. The wealth we are tracking today is not merely a collection of high net worths or diversified portfolios. It is a measurement of how effectively these women have overcome that friction. This is what we might call the philosophy of resistance. Every dollar counted on this list represents a negotiation won against odds that were statistically impossible. When we look at the trajectory of a black woman rising to the top of Houston's economic food chain, we are witnessing a defiance of the established order. Consider the psychological toll of the black tax, a term often used to describe financial obligations to family, but which in these stratospheres morphs into the excellence tax. This is the unwritten rule that to be considered equal, one must be exceptional. To be considered a boss, one must be a tyrant. To be considered an owner, one must be a fortress. The tension here is palpable. It is the silence in the boardroom when a woman like Debbie Allen or Felicia Rashad walks in, a silence that is not empty, but heavy with the weight of expectation and underestimation. For decades, the narrative surrounding black women in media and business has been one of survival. They were the strong backbones, the emotional anchors, the voices that sang in the background while others stood in the spotlight. But the women on this list shattered that paradigm. They stopped asking for a seat at the table and began building their own dining halls. This shift creates a profound tension in the marketplace. Industries that were comfortable exploiting black talent for pennies on the dollar become hostile when that talent demands equity, ownership, and creative control. Look at the battles fought by Megan Thee Stallion or the strategic silence of Beyoncé. These are not just career moves, they are acts of war against a system designed to extract value rather than compound it. This friction generates a specific kind of heat, the heat of scrutiny. When a black woman accumulates this level of power, she is watched with the intensity that her counterparts are not. Her spending is analyzed, her tone is policed, and her rightful anger is pathologized. The angry black woman trope is the weapon society uses to punish the assertive black female executive. Yet, the women we are about to rank have taken that weapon and dismantled it. They have turned the heat of that friction into fuel. They have mastered the art of counter-storytelling with their very lives. Instead of shrinking to fit the limited space allowed for them, they expanded until the walls cracked. This is the tension of the double consciousness that W.E.B. Du Bois spoke of, but upgraded for the 21st century. It is the ability to see oneself through the eyes of a doubting world, while simultaneously holding a vision of oneself as an empire. It requires a mental fortitude that money cannot buy, but which creates the conditions for money to accumulate. As we move into this countdown, do not just look at the numbers. Look at the endurance. Look at the strategic pivots. Look at the way they have navigated the treacherous waters between being an entertainer and being an institution. In Houston, a city built on the extraction of energy from the earth, these women have proven that the most valuable resource is not found in the ground, but in the will. The tension is high, the stakes are astronomical, and the friction is constant. But as we are about to see, diamonds are only formed under pressure, and these 10 women are the hardest substances in the city. We begin not with the flash of the paparazzi bulb or the chaotic noise of the viral moment, but with something far more terrifying to the average mind, the relentless, unyielding discipline of consistency. At number 10, we find Chandra Wilson, a woman whose financial fortress was not built in a single explosion of fame, but brick by brick, hour by hour, over 2 decades of showing up when others burned out. In the volatile ecosystem of Hollywood, where careers are often measured in months, Wilson represents the terrifying weight of stability. She is the embodiment of the blue-chip human stock. For 20 years, she has worn the scrubs of Dr. Miranda Bailey on Grey's Anatomy, a role that demanded she become the moral anchor of a shifting universe. But to view this merely as acting is to miss the economic philosophy at play. This is the defense of excellence in its most bureaucratic form. To remain on a hit show for 20 seasons requires a suppression of the ego that few artists can muster. It requires a kind of double consciousness, the ability to be an artist and an employee, a creator and a cog in a multibillion-dollar machine. Consider the silence of her wealth. While her peers chased magazine covers and controversy to stay relevant, Wilson chose the quiet, compounding interest of syndication. This is the black tax, flipped on its head. She worked twice as hard not just to be seen, but to be indispensable. Every time an episode airs in a living room in untroubled suburbia, or streams on a phone in a crowded Tokyo subway, a transaction occurs. It is a ghost economy. Her past labor continues to work for her present reality. This is the dream of the immigrant, the dream of the ancestor, to do the work once and be paid for it forever. By stepping behind the camera to direct, she seized the means of production, transforming from a laborer into an architect. With a net worth hovering in the $10 million range, she proves that the most radical thing a black woman in Hollywood can be is steady. She is not a firework, she is the lighthouse. And if Chandra Wilson is the quiet discipline of the screen, number 9, Yolanda Adams, is the thunderous discipline of the spirit. Here, the narrative shifts from the hospital hallway to the cathedral, yet the economic principle remains remarkably similar: ownership of one's voice. In the landscape of American music, gospel is often treated as a niche, a charitable sideline to the main event of pop and R&B. Yolanda Adams refused this categorization. She understood that faith is not just a belief system, it is a market. But to speak of her wealth requires us to look past the multi-platinum plaques and into the machinery of her influence. For over a decade, her voice was the alarm clock for Black America. The Yolanda Adams Morning Show was not just radio, it was a daily ritual, a syndicated communion that reached into millions of cars and kitchens. In the radio business, syndication is the golden goose. It is the mechanism that allows a single voice to be everywhere at once, generating high-margin revenue through licensing fees and advertising splits that far exceed the earnings of a touring musician. But Adams went further. She recognized that her brand was not just music, but morning. It was the energy required to face the day. So she commodified that energy. Her venture into the coffee industry with ethically sourced blends was a masterstroke of vertical integration. She was no longer just providing the song to wake you up, she was providing the caffeine to keep you moving. By diversifying into jewelry, apparel, and coffee, she acknowledged a profound truth, that to be an icon is to be consumed. She allowed her audience to consume her inspiration in every sense. With a net worth of $6 million, she stands as a testament to the profitability of the soul. She did not need to code switch into pop stardom to find her fortune. She forced the market to come to the sanctuary. In a city like Houston, where the sacred and the profane often dance on the same street corner, Yolanda Adams proves that you can serve God and still master mammon. If Yolanda Adams represents the sanctuary of the voice, our next subject represents the architecture of the silence. We descend from the high decibels of the gospel choir into the rarefied, hushed galleries of the museum world. Here, we encounter number 8, Solange Knowles, a woman who has mastered a different kind of currency: cool capital. To understand her wealth, we must first understand the shadow. For years, Solange existed in the periphery of a supernova, known simply as the younger sister of the world's biggest pop star. In the standard narrative of celebrity, this is a trap. The public expects the sibling to chase the same spotlight, to run the same race on a smaller track. But Solange performed a brilliant psychological and financial pivot. She stopped running. She slowed down. She looked at the frantic machinery of pop stardom, the stadiums, the radio hits, the constant demand for accessibility, and she quietly walked out the side door. She entered the world of high art. This is where the concept of the code switch becomes a tool of empire building. Typically, code switching is a survival mechanism, a way for Black people to shrink themselves to fit into white professional spaces. Solange inverted this. She entered the white-walled spaces of the Guggenheim, the Getty, and the Venice Biennale not to shrink, but to curate. Through her creative agency, Saint Heron, she transformed her taste into a commodity. This is not merely about making music, it is about becoming an institution. When major luxury brands like Calvin Klein or Mercedes-Benz want to access the avant-garde Black aesthetic, that specific mixture of raw history and futuristic minimalism, they cannot just buy an ad. They have to hire a translator. Solange became that translator. She charges a premium for her consulting and creative direction because she possesses the cultural keys that these billion-dollar corporations lack. Her wealth, estimated between $8 and $10 million, is a testament to the profitability of discernment. She proved that you do not need to be everything to everyone. You simply need to be indispensable to the tastemakers. Her real estate portfolio reflects this same curatorial eye. She does not just buy houses, she restores history, flipping architectural gems in New Orleans and Los Angeles with a designer's precision. In Solange, we see the power of the boutique empire, small, sharp, and incredibly expensive. But if Solange is the quiet, curated revolution, number 7 is the explosion. We move from the museum to the megaphone. Lizzo. Born in Detroit but forged in the humidity of Houston, Lizzo represents the absolute inverse of the quiet arts. Her rise to an estimated net worth of $10 to $12 million offers a masterclass in the commodification of the self. In the academic and corporate worlds, black bodies, especially those that do not conform to Eurocentric standards of thinness, are often policed, hidden, or disciplined. The mask here is usually one of invisibility. Lizzo, however, realized that in the attention economy, invisibility is bankruptcy. She took the very traits that society told her to hide, her size, her loudness, her unapologetic blackness, and she weaponized them into a global brand. This is the defense of excellence, remixing into the offense of joy. The financial engine here is not just music streaming, though hits like Truth Hurts printed money. The engine is Yitty. By partnering with Fabletix to launch her own shapewear line, Lizzo did something distinct from a standard endorsement deal. She didn't just rent her name, she secured equity in the manufacturing infrastructure. She attacked the multi-billion-dollar shapewear market, directly challenging the hegemony of Kim Kardashian's schemes, but with a specifically inclusive Houston hottie ethos. This is where the hustle meets the vertical integration. Endorsements with Google, Dove, and Logitech followed, all banking on her specific brand of radical confidence. Yet, we must look closer at the cost of this mask. To be the mascot of self-love is a heavy labor. It requires a constant performance of joy, a perpetual smile even when the internet turns hostile. Lizzo's wealth is tied to her ability to maintain this high-energy persona, to be the battery that powers the confidence of millions. It is a lucrative role, but it is an exhausting one. Where Solange finds value in withholding herself, Lizzo finds value in pouring herself out completely. Both women, in their own ways, have navigated the minefield of public perception. One retreated into the fortress of high art, the other stormed the gates of pop culture with a flute in hand. They are the yin and yang of Houston's younger generation of wealth, one built on exclusion, the other on inclusion. Both proving that whether you whisper or whether you scream, the market will pay you, as long as you own the masters of your own voice. If Solange and Lizzo represent the explosive, incandescent energy of the new guard, wealth built on visibility, virality, and the sheer force of personality, our next chapter requires us to quiet the room. We must leave the stadium and the festival grounds and enter spaces where the air is cooler, the wood is polished, and the power is silent. We are moving from the chaotic marketplace of the internet to the hallowed halls of the institution. In the genealogy of Houston wealth, if the previous generation is the flash, this generation is the foundation. We arrive now at the dynasty builders. These are the women who didn't just survive the industry, they rewrote the zoning laws of Hollywood itself. They remind us that while fame is a sprint, wealth, true, multigenerational, institutional wealth, is a marathon run in heels. At number 6, we find the general, Debbie Allen. To the modern eye, she is Dr. Catherine Avery on Grey's Anatomy, a character who owns the hospital, not just works in it. But this role is merely art imitating life. Debbie Allen's fortune, estimated at over $15 million, is not a result of merely appearing on camera. It is the result of a decades-long siege on the fortress of production. She understands a fundamental truth about the entertainment economy that eludes most actors. The person in front of the lens draws a salary, but the person behind the lens builds an empire. Her wealth is rooted in the title, executive producer. In the hierarchy of Hollywood credits, this is the holy grail. It means you own a piece of the machine. But her true ghost in the classroom moment, the phantom of influence that haunts every check she cashes, goes back to the 1980s with a different world. Consider the philosophical weight of that show. Debbie Allen took a spin-off sitcom and transformed it into a cultural mandate. She single-handedly revitalized the image of the historically black college and university, HBCU, turning academic excellence into a televised aesthetic. This wasn't just directing, this was social engineering through media. By making the fictitious Hillman College the center of the black universe, she created a syndication beast that has been feeding her bank account for 30 years. Every time a rerun airs, the cash register rings. But beyond the screen, she solidified her legacy with the Debbie Allen Dance Academy. This is not a vanity project, it is a brick-and-mortar institution in Los Angeles. It is real estate. It is legacy. It is the difference between being a star who fades and a matriarch who governs. She didn't just kick open the doors for black women in Hollywood, she bought the building, renovated the lobby, and started charging admission. And standing shoulder to shoulder with her in this pantheon of Houston royalty is her sister, number 5, Felicia Rashad. If Debbie is the kinetic energy, the motion of the dance, Felicia is the potential energy, the stillness of the statue. With a net worth eclipsing $20 million, Felicia Rashad represents prestige wealth. There is a specific economic value to dignity. In a market that often rewards buffoonery and scandal, Rashad has monetized gravitas. Beginning as the mother of the black community on The Cosby Show, she anchored the most profitable syndication engine in television history. But unlike many who get trapped in the amber of a single iconic role, Rashad pivoted into the high art of the theater and the blockbuster weight of the Creed franchise. Her wealth is a lesson in selectivity. She does not chase checks, the checks chase her, and they add a zero for the privilege of her presence. But the most fascinating aspect of her portfolio is her transition into the literal academy. Serving as the dean of the College of Fine Arts at Howard University, she dissolved the line between playing a role and living it. This is a salaried, executive position of high institutional power. It provides a different kind of currency, influence over the next generation of talent. Between the two sisters, the Allen Rashad dynasty proves that the most enduring wealth in Houston isn't found in oil or tech, but in the relentless, disciplined accumulation of cultural authority. They are the ghosts in the classroom, the invisible hands guiding the culture, proving that while it is profitable to be watched, it is far more lucrative to be obeyed. If the Allen Rashad dynasty represents the institutional fortification of the mind, our next chapter brings us to the commodification and the liberation of the body. At number 4, we find Simone Biles. But to understand the $25 to $27 million attached to her name, we must look past the gold medals and see the philosophical rupture she introduced to the economy of sport. For a century, the black athlete has been positioned as a machine, a high-performance asset whose value is calculated by output, durability, and silence. Simone Biles broke the machine. When she withdrew from the Tokyo Olympics, she did not just step off a mat. She stepped out of a centuries-old contract that demanded black women sacrifice their sanity for public consumption. Her wealth, therefore, is not just a collection of endorsement checks, it is the monetization of boundaries. By leaving Nike, the safe, standard uniform of the global athlete, for Athleta, she wasn't just switching logos. She was shifting from a flat fee to an equity stake. She realized that in the traditional model, she was merely the talent, the fuel for someone else's engine. In this new paradigm, she is the engine. The Gold Over America tour is the ultimate manifestation of this. Instead of lending her gravity-defying genius to a federation that keeps the lion's share of the gate, she built her own stage, promoted her own show, and kept the receipts. She proved that the most profitable move a black woman can make is to realize that she does not need the institution to validate her excellence. The institution needs her excellence to stay relevant. From the discipline of the gym, we move to the turbulence of the charts. At number 3, Megan Thee Stallion represents a different kind of warfare, the battle for intellectual property. In the music industry, the black tax often manifests as a predatory extraction. Artists create the culture, and labels own the master recordings. Megan's rise to a net worth of $40 million is a study in resilience against this extractive machinery. Her wealth is aggressive. It had to be. She is not just fighting for chart position, she has been fighting a very public, very painful war for autonomy. When she inked a distribution deal with Warner Music Group in 2024 that allowed her to keep her masters, she secured the holy grail of generational wealth. Owning the masters means you are not just paid for the performance, you are paid for the echo. Every time her voice rings out in a commercial, a movie, or a stream, she is not paying a landlord, she is collecting rent. But there is a duality here that is distinctly Houston. She is the hot girl coach and a college graduate, a sex symbol and a franchise owner. By investing in real estate and securing equity in franchises like Popeyes, she is diversifying her portfolio to ensure that her financial safety is not dependent on the fickle nature of fame. She is building a fortress around her creativity, proving that in a world desperate to consume black women, the only way to survive is to own the menu. But where do these instincts come from? Who draws the map that allows a Simone or a Megan to navigate these minefields? This brings us to number 2, the literal and metaphorical matriarch of Houston's wealth, Tina Knowles Lawson. It is tempting to dismiss her presence here as a byproduct of her daughter's fame, but that would be a fundamental misunderstanding of the architecture of this entire list. Before the stadiums, before the billions, there was the salon. In the 1990s, Tina Knowles didn't just cut hair, she curated an aesthetic that would eventually conquer the world. With a net worth of $25 million, she is the ancestral blueprint. She taught the generation under her that talent is insufficient without ownership. The House of Duran, her art collection featuring Henry Ossawa Tanner, her real estate moves, these were not hobbies. They were lessons in value retention. She understood that black culture is the most valuable export in America, yet its creators are often the last to get paid. She reversed that flow. By meticulously crafting the image of Destiny's Child, she didn't just sew costumes. She stitched together a business model that prioritized family ownership over industry approval. She is the bridge between the struggle of the past and the domination of the future, the quiet architect who realized that if you want to build a dynasty that lasts, you don't just raise children. You raise CEOs. And finally, we arrive at the singularity. Number 1. If the previous entrants on this list represented the climbing of the mountain, Beyoncé Knowles Carter represents the moment the mountain is conquered, leveled, and replaced by a fortress of one's own design. To speak of her wealth as merely a number, estimated between $600 and $800 million, is to miss the philosophical weight of what she has constructed. In a capitalist system historically designed to extract black labor while suppressing black ownership, Beyoncé stands as a glitch in the code. She is the counter-narrative made flesh. We often discuss the concept of the black tax, the exhausting reality that one must work twice as hard to get half as far. Beyoncé took that crushing mathematical disadvantage and inverted it. She worked 4 times as hard, possessed a discipline that bordered on the ascetic, until the tax was no longer paid to the industry, but the industry began paying taxes to her. This is the transition from entertainer to institution. The lesson she offers is not about vocal range or choreography, it is about the violence of sovereignty. Consider the formation of Parkwood Entertainment. In an era where artists are desperate for the machinery of major labels, she built her own machinery. She understood that, in the traditional narrative of the music industry, the artist is the product and the label is the owner. She refused this dialectic. By bringing management, production, fashion, and film in-house, she eliminated the friction of the middleman. She didn't just ask for a bigger slice of the pie, she bought the bakery and the land it sat on. This is the defense of excellence weaponized. Her ownership of her master recordings is perhaps the most profound act of resistance in modern music history. For a black artist, owning one's masters is not just a financial asset, it is a reclamation of history. It ensures that the voice, the sweat, and the cultural output cannot be colonized by a corporate entity long after the creator is gone. It is a safeguard against the erasure that befell so many jazz and blues legends who died penniless while their recordings generated fortunes for others. Then there is the silence. Real wealth, the kind that rivals the GDP of small nations, moves in silence. While the culture demands constant noise and visibility, Beyoncé retreats. She releases albums without promotion. She grants almost no interviews. This scarcity creates value. It is a lesson in supply and demand applied to the self. She understands that to be everywhere is to be nowhere. In a world of instant gratification, she forces the audience to wait, to listen, and to pay attention. This command over the public's attention span is a form of power that transcends currency. Her recent ventures, from the Renaissance World Tour to the launch of Seekerd, demonstrate a mastery of the vertical integration that defined the oil tycoons of Houston's past. She is drilling for culture, refining it, and selling it back to the world at a premium. And look at the physical manifestation of this empire, the $200 million concrete compound in Malibu. It is brutalist, permanent, and fortress-like. It is a statement that she is not a tenant in the house of American wealth, she is a foundational pillar. This is the ultimate resonance of the Houston hustle. It is the realization that the Space City ethos, the ambition to reach the stars, was never just about NASA. It was about a girl from the Third Ward who looked at the ceiling of what was possible for a black woman in America and decided to tear the roof off. As we close this countdown, the lesson from these 10 women is clear. Wealth is not just about accumulation, it is about insulation. It is about building a wall high enough to keep the indignities of systemic bias at bay, and a table large enough to feed the next generation. From Chandra Wilson's quiet consistency to Beyoncé's global dominance, these women prove that in Houston, the most valuable resource isn't oil. It is the unyielding, diversified, and owned brilliance of the black woman.